Hey, Composed Gloves here, and today this is the second video in the 3 oscillator from the ground up. Today we're going to be talking about the oscillators. You need to know what phase is, you need to know what oscillators are. These are all covered in my Sound Synth Basics thing, and you really need to have a solid grip on phase and on stereo images. If you can't define what a stereo signal is or what stereo is, you need to go learn that. It's at the last video right now. It's video, I believe, 34, but 36 in the playlist currently, subject to change. But it's labeled what is stereo. Go watch that one. And also aliasing. Have a really good grip on aliasing. Now in the last video, I sort of made it sound like, oh yeah, aliasing, you could oversample it after it aliases. That's utter nonsense. I don't know why I said that. At least I made it sound like you could kind of do that. It's just wrong. Yeah, I know that's wrong too. I don't know why I said that. And I guess I just wasn't thinking that great. Anyways, because if you have an alias signal and then you oversample it, you're just going to oversample an alias signal, so it doesn't do anything. You have to oversample it before then. So you're going to have to deal with the aliasing until it gets rendered out. So you may consider rendering it out as a separate thing and then bringing it in, because then you have an unaliased thing, but then you don't get to use all the cool things that OSC, 3 times OSC can do. So it's, I don't know, it's just a weird deal. So there are some weird things that if you don't know about these weird things, they're gonna get you. So this right here, this is a drunk plugin. It came over and started just drinking all my stuff. So I'm gonna have to ask it to leave, and this one can go too. Okay, so I'm not sure what that other one was doing. So I'm going to open up a new one because of some of the settings that pop up. I just love how, isn't that nice how it opens up? So nice. So we're going to be talking about what these things do and are. And there's only really one page to talk about, but there are additional pages that we will get to in future videos. So some of the weirdness involves us turning these guys off. So the weird things that even if you know what you're doing, you might not like what happens, because you're going to be like, why is this weird thing happening? I'll show you what the weird things are in a little bit. For now, just turn these knobs down. So we're on oscillator 1, and we have our various waveforms. You have a sine, square, a sort of halfway between a sine and a square. It's like a pulse wave with a wimpy, with one cycle being sort of wimpy. So a true pulse wave doesn't have a wimpy half cycle, but you know, that's theoretical. You will never get that in real life, even if it says so on your plugin, because your speakers are secretly work for the Illuminati. And we've got a triangle wave and a saw wave. This is a random wave, so it's noise. I guess I should be playing examples of this, because you guys like those. You like example things, right? You know, not, you know. Now you hear the aliasing in that. Let's do it. Let's do it for the little zzz. Yeah, that shouldn't be there. Okay, that's aliasing. And again, you can't really undo that until you render it out, and then you can get rid of the aliasing. At least that's what it says. Now, you also have this guy right here. So it sounds like, and this gives us a good chance. So you see, let me zoom in here. You see that? And now we can flip it. So there you go, it is flipped. Now this flips the polarity. You can't flip the phase, because the phase is relative to a moment in time. If you flip phase, you have to literally reverse your, it's a weird technical thing. People say, oh yeah, it flips the phase all the time. Like, they'll say that. That's fine. You know what? Everyone knows what you mean. It's just, it's utter nonsense at the same time. It's one of those things where it's like, it's been accepted as a thing, but it's not really a thing. You flip polarity, which means you take the positive peak and you make it negative. Polarity is different than phase, because phase is over time. So yeah, that's my fun rant about that today. In case you didn't know, I'm sure someone in the comments is gonna disagree with me and be like, la 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 la, and maybe I got him backwards. No, I don't got him backwards. So yeah, if you say flip phase, it's like you're weird bro, dude, because you'd have to play your signal backwards to flip the phase. Phase isn't relative to any one cycle. Phase is relative to a signal as a whole. It's a weird deal. It's a different deal. So at times they are interchangeable when it's like a single cycle, but it's again relevant to a particular signal at any point in time. It matters a lot more when you're messing with really complicated signals. The differences become greater and greater. So over here, you see a little pop-up comes up. It's a FL Studio saying, hey, bro, dude, you want to do something? Like, we can do it again. Like, hey, bro, dude, what is this pop-up? What is the deal with that? Well, it could take a sample and use that as its source for oscillation. So this is going to be a little loud. Okay, so I'm going to trim it up so we can put in a sample here, and it will use this as an oscillation source. So it'll take a cycle from here. I have a question though, if anyone knows in the comments, because I couldn't find an answer to this, but I didn't look very hard. So I don't blame myself for not finding an answer. It will use this as a source. So listen to this. If I turn it to the sample wave. So it's using a piece of that audio. If you hit Control E, you get a closer look. So hit Control E, opens it in Edison, and you could like, look at, oh, okay, that's what it's using. How interesting to generate the waveform. Now, what my question is does it take a single cycle? If you drop one cycle in here, then that's the cycle. There's no question about it. But if you use something like this, listen to this. Like that's a really substantial difference. So I don't know. It definitely keeps the pitch, but it sounds like it's like going through something. No. I don't know. It just sounds, that's pretty radically different as you go up. Maybe it's the aliasing. You know what? It's probably the aliasing. I think it's the aliasing, but it grabs a sample. I believe the first sample and uses that, the first complete cycle. So the guy way over here, this guy as our sample. But at the same time, it sounds like it's kind of moving along in here somewhere, but I think, you know what, it's probably the aliasing. Because if we get higher, that would make sense, because aliasing would increase. It's just some of those are pretty radically different. So I don't know if someone has like the magic answer to that one. But yeah, so that's what these buttons do. How cool is that? These will form the basis of a lot of our sound design decisions. Okay, now comes the part where I expect you to know about stereo stuff. We have phase offset. What does this mean? What is this phase offset jumbo? And this little symbol right here means stereo. So you've watched the video on stereo, of course, because that's like, it's like one of the greatest videos out there, just my video on stereo. And in the left side, it's generating a signal. Right side is generating a signal for me to, listen to, because I'm like the center of the universe. And what it does with phase offset is it will move this one off a little bit from this one. It's basically like a Reese generator. No, that's detune, my bad. But anyways, let me just play you an example. So it moves the phase from one signal. So if they're both in line, it'll move one slightly off. And so I will use a saw wave. So there you have it. And then I will now offset the phase. One quick moment. On this analyzer, blue is, I believe, the right signal and green is the left. And on the top one, on this top guy right here, any shading that goes on is stereo information. So if it's not a single line, it's stereo information. So I will now offset it. So you see, now we have shading, and we have a blue line and a green line. So you see, it is now moving the starting points of the waveforms across each other. This is another commonality of what phase, some of the properties of phase. In this case, it's kind of okay to think of it that way. In reality, it's shifting all the sample points and doing all sorts of cool stuff. So you see, it's just been shifted just off. Now you'll notice as we get higher, the signals are really, really, really small cycles. But as we get lower, they get farther apart. The difference becomes more noticeable because the phase is a lot bigger. So, okay, that's important. Okay, that's one of the differences between polarity and phase. Polarity flip just flips the polarities. Phase is a different sort of thing. Okay, so that's what phase offset is. And what's really happening is you saw this is stereo phenomena. So it's not like it's generating a new signal. It's taking the signal that's already there and making this one a little bit different. My left speaker a little bit different than my right speaker. So it's kind of an interesting deal. So the detune does the same thing. So in some plugins, detune means it takes all the harmonics above a fundamental and it will, shift them down. In this case, the detunes it. It's like a chorus effect. It'll take, except for it's not a chorus effect. It's a weird deal. And so the signal comes out both speakers at the same time, but one is slightly out of tune from the other one. So it'll do that. So let me demonstrate this. This is the thing that can kind of make a Reese pretty easy. So you see, it's very LFO-like, as in it's not very fast. This is LFO. If you increase your pitch, it's very, very fast. And you can hear really clear artifacts from the aliasing. So that is that. Now let's move over here to the chorus. Chorus is just tuning. So if I move this around, So nice, right? Just tuning. So that's the pitch. And then over here we have fine tuning. Fine tuning is it's just really, really fine. So this is like stepwise, and then fine tuning is the little stuff. So you can get to any sort of middle ground that you need to get to. They decided to break it up into 2 knobs. It's easier in some ways, useful for some kinds of sound design. And then last but not least, we have a panning. So you can see it turn from blue to green. And this is one. Now, if you hit Alt and click a parameter, it will reset it to its default, in case you didn't know. And this is really useful for panning. Oh, that's not what I'm going to say. Panning is covered in my stereo video. So go check that out if you still haven't checked it out, because it's like the greatest video ever. So as you see, these knobs are duplicated for 3 things. So we can have 3 things going. However, what gets weird is the fact that I could do this. So let's say, for example, I have a sine wave. If I turn this to a triangle wave, if I turn this is volume. So these are the volume knobs. Okay, do you notice this one doesn't have them? This is part of the weirdness. So if I turn my volume knob all the way up, do you expect to hear the sine wave and a saw wave at full volume? Well, you'd be like, yeah. Nope. Just a saw wave. And look at when I turn down. Now you hear it being layered in. What is the deal with that? Well, it uses a percentage system. I don't know why. Okay, I don't know why, but it's kind of a cool, unique thing to this plugin. At the same time, it's sort of annoying. And that is, so it uses a percentage system. So right now, I believe this is 50%. Yeah. So 50%, so it's 50% this sine wave, 50%, the saw wave, 50% the sine wave. So if we want to use this guy, check this out. If it's already 50%, 50%. So we're divvying up the percentages between the 3 of them. So it's kind of a cool deal. You'll notice that this is at 0 and this is at 12 and 24. It's 2 octaves, octave, the lowest. So that's where that low tone came from. So when you're mixing and matching here, you're going to need to be aware of these things. Okay, now we have this last option down here. You know what? I'll cover this in a separate video. So that's that. Now, what's a cool sort of thing you can do? So I want to show you one of the simplest sounds ever, but totally one of the coolest sounds. So it sounds like this. It is a sine wave. And just using that, we will send this to channel. Oh, I already have a channel for it. 5. We'll send it to 5. Okay. So on this one, I was messing with the wave shaper, trying to do a thing. It didn't work. I'm going to add reverb to it. Now it's covered in my FL12 effects series. If I just turn the reverb up and turn the low cut up a little bit and turn the decay up, I get one of my favorite sounds ever on the planet, even though it's like really simple. The reverb is a little much. Low cut it more. Bring the decay down to like 3 seconds. Yeah, I could doodle forever. Like, making music is so much fun. So that's like one of my favorite sounds ever. Really simple sound. If that's not enough for you, you could turn on Oscillator too. We'll bring it up to like 50%. And I'm gonna, you know what? I'm gonna take these things both down to like an octave. So the same. I'm gonna detune this one though. So this one, the second one will be detuned slightly. Now what's weird about this idea is if this is detuned slightly and this is coming out straight, it's gonna go against itself and this guy. We're gonna get this interesting effect. It's like we're controlling, as you can see, one is static, but we're controlling the level. Like, it's not as great an effect because it has more to sort of, the sum and difference, because these two are summing half the time, are not a great difference when I'm talking about the phase here. So nice. Okay, so that's kind of a cool thing you could do. We could do this the same thing with sine saw waves. If you increase detune, I'm doing opposite directions, whatever. I'm just looking to detune it. You can go the same way. It's interesting to hear the difference. And if you really want really cool control, so here's another cool idea. If we come in here and like, I don't know, let's say we're trying to make a thing. Like something like this. And we want to vary that up to make it sound kind of cooler. Hit F5 to bring up your playlist. What you can do is you could select it, and you can, by the way, I have a whole series on FL12, how to make your first song in FL Studios, FL12, something like that. Check out my playlist. There's lots of cool stuff there. And you could, we could automate the phase offsets. And so this is sort of like controlling our stereo image now, because we're controlling the intensity differences as we move around on various, because when you shift the phase of one and the other, it's not intensity difference because they're the same intensity. It's just the sum and difference. So it's technically, it gets more intense in one than the other. But when we do that on two things, it gets a little more complicated. So like, for example, let's do something like this. Maybe this is gibberish to you because you didn't watch my, oh, you wouldn't do that, would you? You didn't watch my stereo video yet? Nah, you watched it. Come on. Someone's gonna troll and be like, I didn't watch your video. That's okay. So, okay, what did I just do? Well, I automated the phase. This one I kind of just did random crap. This one just decreases over time back to 0. So it'll reach optimum right here. So you're just creating variation as we do things. A little move. Changing this, it just creates a wash. If you do too much, it won't sound very crisp or clear anymore. Have you ever tried to make a beat and play at the same time? Like make it like as if it was a live performance, but in reality you're just messing around in FL. I do that all the time. It's kind of a hard deal to do to make it sound convincing and do it all. Like your workflow's got to be freaking killer. You got to know all your keyboard shortcuts. We could add in this third guy for a little more fun. Now he's the lowest, okay? So we're not playing exactly any low notes in this. If we play some really low notes now, we're gonna have issues. So I might consider having him as a separate component. So as in a separate 3 times OSC to mess with. But yeah, so that's some cool things you can sort of do just with some basic controls. He also will if we keep him the same, he'll outline our fundamental frequency, which is always a good thing. Something that you should be aware of is that these things, for example, sine wave, no overtone structure, overtone structure, overtone, overtone, overtone. I have a basic waveform video. I believe I go more in depth in it in my learn FM synthesis, where I sort of break down the structure of these things because they become really important. But they're also covered in my Sound Synth Basics, so you should at least know the basic ideas. But yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. Subscribe and have a blessed day. And this is the first video in Sound and Synth Basics. I'm super excited about this series. I hope you're excited. If you don't know anything about sound, if this is your first shot, then this is the series for you. I'm going to teach it. I've thought about this. I want a real solid series because as I get into more advanced things, I need people to understand the basics like how I know that I understand them. And so I've thought a lot about the concepts and orders that this has to be.